Hello, a very warm good afternoon to all of you and welcome to Unacademy. Welcome to the essay paper analysis for the UPSC mains examination, where, as all of you would be aware, that today marks the kickstart of the mains examination 2024, and the first paper being essay paper, which is oftentimes considered to be one of the difference creators when it comes to the scoring ability of the candidates. Now, in this particular session, we shall be taking a look at each of the questions which have been asked in the essay paper, analyzing why these questions are important, and also if you would have to write the essay for these particular questions, what could be the approach for writing these essays. Now, before I initiate the discussion, for all the candidates who have appeared for the examination, this can be an analysis which is very relevant for you. But also the candidates who are serious, let's suppose for the next year or the year after that, this video is also important for you because you will get an idea and you will get habituated to the type of questions, the language, the framing that UPSC does put out for you, and try to use this as an opportunity to create your own sample essay and get into the habit of answer writing so that when you appear for the examination, the paper should not surprise you. Now, just like every year, this year as well, UPSC had asked the questions which were largely philosophical in their approach, and that required you to provide the different types of perspectives available. So very briefly, let me talk about how do you approach these philosophical essays. So there is a set paradigm that can be used. For example, whenever you come across any difficult kind of a question, any thought-based question, first of all, you need to provide the interpretation of the question in itself. That what do we mean by that particular thought, by that quotation, what is the actual meaning of it and the implication of that. So there you have to spend some amount of words and some amount of space in order to explain that. After that, you need to be able to provide the perspectives. For example, any particular essay, what are the various political angle, the historical context, the geographical context, the economical context that can be provided for that particular essay paper and that particular essay topic. So the importance of perspectives provides the evaluator an idea that the candidate is able to take a look at the holistic picture. And that is also very important to be provided. And with each of the questions, we are going to discuss the interpretation and also the various different perspectives, the economical perspective, social, interpersonal perspectives that can be added to these particular questions. And eventually, there is also a significant amount of role provided to the examples and the case studies. So when you provide the examples in the questions, that not only authenticates the answer, but also makes your entire essay more realistic and more relatable to the day-to-day events and the day-to-day happenings. As much as you are able to relate to it to the present scenario, the better your essay will turn out to be. So overall, you had the 8 questions divided into 2 sections, section A and section B, each containing 4 questions. One essay needed to be written from each of these sections. So without further ado, let us take a look at these questions and let us try to understand how could we create an essay out of it. So starting with the first question. Now ideally, this particular question has got its genesis from the very basic aspect of environment and ecology. Now what is that question or the essay topic? Forests precede civilizations and deserts follow them. Now, ideally, if you are able to understand or if you are able to recount who provided this quotation, that is an ideal scenario. But if in case you are not aware about who said this and from which author or from which poet or from which thinker this process has come from, then you need not worry that much. You simply jump into the interpretation. So when we talk about this particular topic, that forests precede civilization and deserts follow them, this was provided by the French philosopher François-René de Chateaubriand. Now, what is the context of this particular topic? So, any place, when we consider any particular region of the planet, now that particular area initially would have a significant amount of biodiversity and natural vegetation. As man would colonize that area, that is when human settlements and human civilizations would thrive in that region. But at the pinnacle of human civilization, biodiversity and natural ecosystem are oftentimes ignored and they take a backseat. And what follows is a condition of barren earth and the barren nature. And that is where you have the aspect of desert, which is ascribed here. So how do you start this essay? How do you initiate the essay? That is a major problem that the candidates face. So first of all, in this kind of an essay directly, you can either start with an anecdotal example, and that anecdotal example will also provide a historical perspective. Now, for those of the candidates who are new to this, who are trying to appear and trying to prepare for the examination for next year or year after that, let me provide you with the best key or the best shortcut in order to think about the varied perspectives. Whenever you come across any topic, start from the syllabus of GS paper 1 to GS paper 4. And each of the subjects involved in these GS papers can end up providing you with a perspective. For example, in GS paper 1, you have the subjects of history, geography, society. In GS paper 2, polity, governance, IR. In GS paper 3, economy. GS paper 4, you have the portion of ethics. So, from each of these, try to pick up one perspective and your essay will be complete before you realize it. So, in the starting here, let us start with the historical perspective that can be provided. So, here when we talk about the interpretation or the actual meaning of this particular topic. So, here the historical perspective can be taken in the context, let's not go anywhere else, let's talk about the Indian civilization itself. Now, we do know with our understanding of the past that at the time of the Harappan civilization and the Indus Valley civilization, you had the settlements which had happened in the northwestern part of the country. And various evidences do indicate that the central and the eastern part of the country were heavily forested. With the advent of Iron Age, you had the clearing of the forests and eventually the other areas were colonized by humans, and then you entered into the era of the Mahajanpadas, where various different major and mega provinces and power centers came into existence. Now, the rise of the Mahajanpadas came on the backdrop of what? The destruction of the forests. So, you had the forests which were present in the region of central and eastern India significantly. And then after that, you had the growth of civilization, knowledge, society, culture, everything thrived. And that reached a kind of a pinnacle in terms of architecture, in terms of science, in terms of other advancements in medicines, art forms, etc. And that is what is meant when you talk about civilizational aspect. Then after that, fast forward it to the present day circumstance or the present day context. In the present day context, you will find that major parts of the central India, major parts of the eastern India, they are experiencing a barren condition, climatic condition due to increased amount of human settlements and destruction of the natural vegetation. So, what is going to follow if we continue with the same rate of expansion of our civilization is nothing but the desert landscape. Now, here evidences in history have shown us that how forested area has been cleared in the region of Himalayan foothills, in the region of eastern part. For example, as recently as the time of the British. Now, when the British rule existed in India, the Britishers systematically cleared away the forests in the region of the Himalayan foothills in the Tarai zone. Now, that region which was well known for its biological diversity with the aspect of variety of different kinds of animal species and plant species to be found there. Now, those areas were cleared. Why? For the civilizational need. Because the paper or the tree which were cut down, that trees or those trees were utilized for manufacturing of railway sleepers and also for the manufacturing of paper, because the paper and the print industry grew rapidly. And that was nothing but civilization at its worst possible level. And eventually, presently, what do we face? We face the condition that the Tarai region is now deforested, having a lack of vegetation in that area, and slowly and steadily land degradation has led to varied kind of hydrological cycle, rainfall patterns have dissipated, and there is a threat of desertification looming in that region. So, like that, examples can be given. Similarly, examples can also be given for central and southern part of the country, which used to have a lush green vegetation. And here you can also cite the examples of the biodiversity and the forest aspect and the forest landscape, which could exist in the entirety of the central and the southern part of the country. You had various species such as lions, bustards, etc., which could be found all the way to the southern part of India. Now they are restricted in one corner of our country. So you can cite examples to authenticate it. So that is the portion of your interpretation of the subject or the interpretation of the topic itself. But then, how do you write beyond those 400 words? Initial 400 words is very easy to write because you would have read some portions of GS, and that is what the mistake that majority of the candidates they do, that they read a particular topic and they think that, okay, I will be able to write the essay about it, but you have to write 1200 words out of it. So the ability to think beyond 1200 words or beyond those 400 words, that is what provides the necessity to put in perspectives. So let us see how we can broaden and horizontally expand this particular topic. So here, let us break down and let us declutter this particular topic. So here, what is indicated by forest and civilization and desert? What can be the other interpretation of it? So forests can always be thought to be a condition at an interpersonal level, at a very localized level, or at a level of a society as well, which indicates bountiful opportunities, diversity of thoughts, opinions, etc. And when we talk about civilization, it is a stage of human social and cultural development and organization that is considered most advanced. Right? It can be intellectual advancement, it can be social advancement, it can be political advancement, it can be the advancement of economic thought process considered as well. And when we say desert, desert is an indicator of something which is barren. Right? Something which is barren and which does not have any amount of growth opportunities. So basically, the other point of view of thinking about this topic can be that initially you have the abundance of ideas, initially you have the abundance of opportunities, and the moment where you can diversify your thought process, your growth level into any of the area. But slowly and steadily as the mind advances, it starts becoming rigid in a way. And that is when that barren condition starts plaguing you. So here, we can always provide that context of materialism. That slowly and steadily, but because when we talk about materialism, materialism rises from what? Its genesis is that basic greed of achieving something. So before you achieve anything, at the individual level, when you consider the youthful population or at a young age, you have endless amount of opportunities, and then when you start moving down the path of materialism, that is when eventually you realize that you have ignored everything else, and that growth of idea, that intellectual stagnation is something which will start plaguing. And that is when the growth of the human mindset can stop. And people start running after material things or ignoring all other possibilities that lie in front of them. So that is where materialism can be considered to be a perspective in this. Then, for example, when we talk about human achievement, humankind has reached the moon and far beyond. But even in that case, when humans would look up into the sky in the very initial days without the advancement of science, you had multiple different thought-provoking ideas which were provided by scientists from time to time. From Humboldt to Ritter, everybody thought about what the universe could mean, what is the implication of the existence of human life, right? So whenever mankind would look up into the sky, and that is what the thought would be provoked, and that is where even the cave paintings that you take a look at, those cave paintings also indicate the capability of human achievement. But slowly and steadily with the advancement of science, when we take a look at the universe, we have absolutely forgotten the role of man in the universe. Our single edged agenda is basically how far we can reach, or can we colonize Mars or not, can we colonize Moon or not. So there we have become very narrowed in our approach, and that will end up limiting our achievement, because that limits the growth opportunities of the thought process as well. So that is another point which can be added in this context. Then after that, we can also add the context associated with political rigidity. For example, let's suppose when we talk about a new society, or an independent society getting created, an independent civilization. Let's suppose when we talk about any particular country for that matter, after it reaches or attains independence, at that point of time, it is having a freedom to explore all the kind of thought processes and ideals. It at that point of time can also show and exhibit some amount of flexibility about the direction that it will follow to attain its own ideals. But then slowly and steadily, as the country or the nation starts following a particular political ideology or a political thought process, that flexibility goes out of the window. And that is when you have lack of any new ideas. And that is where you experience stagnation and eventual decay. So that decay is what deserts end up indicating. So here, the aspect of flexibility, flexibility of thought, flexibility of opportunities, flexibility of various options, but then eventually follow a path of growth, a path of development, and eventually when you move down that path and you become rigid across that particular path or that process, that is again where you have decay and stagnation. Now, this can also be exemplified with the case of a journey of a young one, journey of a young human. So when the kid enters the classroom at a very young age, at that particular age, the kid has got all the various possibilities that could be explored, be it sports, be it arts, be it performance, or be it studies or intellectual prowess. Anything can be explored. But then those possibilities slowly and steadily start dwindling up. And eventually, as a person follows only a set mindset or only a set path which is laid down before that individual, then that options to explore, they dwindle. Here, take the example of the scientists. For example, in the 1700s or in the 1600s, you had the scientists who were also referred to as the universal scientists, who could basically explore not only a particular systemic branch of science, but who could take a look at science as a whole. You will come across thinkers such as Immanuel Kant. Now, Immanuel Kant has provided theories associated with geography, has provided theories associated with philosophical ethics, and has provided theories with regards to how the subject, let's suppose history, needs to be looked at, how the subject of geography. Now, why is that possible? Why was it possible at that era? Nowadays, you will find either a geographer or a historian or a biologist or a physicist. You won't find a geographer who is also a biologist or a historian who is also a physicist. You will not find that. Why? Because now the paths have become very rigid. And that is basically where you have that dualism and the aspect of multifarious approach to science, which has limited man's ability to interrelate the various concepts together and look at the larger comprehensive picture. So that has limited man's growth. So here you can provide the example of the child's progress into a young one, progress, then development of science into a systemic branch, right, into a systemic study, right. So that is something which can also be provided. And how it has now become limited and bereft of any new revolutionary ideas which can suddenly change the process how we think. Then even the economic growth models. Again, when the society starts following the path of development at that point of time, it can take any route models for economic growth, societal growth. It can pay attention to individualistic societal growth or individualistic income level. It can follow a command economy. It can follow a capitalistic growth. But then, as and when the country starts or a society starts following that path, eventually, again, a lack of new ideas. So the desert factor here is something which will signify stagnation and decay and the lack of newer ideas. Having said that, these can be the perspectives. But then, what is required to be written in the initial parts of 200 words is the aspect of man's destruction of ecology, man's destruction of the nature around him. And as a consequence, why the planet is facing a sixth mass extinction. The rate of destruction is unprecedented, something that the planet has never experienced. And the planet is going through a kind of a decay now, a stagnation now. But then if you limit your essay only to the immediate interpretation of this, you won't be able to score good marks, and also you won't be able to write 1200 words without repeating yourself. So that is why very important to diversify the thought perspective. I urge you and I advise you to also start running your mind and think about as many different points that you can from this particular topic and for other topics as well that we are going to discuss, and put that in the comment section below. Let us see how many diverse ideas can we come across, and like that you can have a kind of a peer learning associated as well. Now, after this, we come to the second topic. The second topic is a quotation which is attributed to Winston Churchill post the Second World War, as the entire world was going through a phase of decolonization at that point of time. Winston Churchill had said, the empires of the future will be the empires of the mind. Now, the direct look at this particular topic gives you a clue that this is going to, or this is talking about the intellectual capability that people can end up achieving, and the importance of exploring and exploiting that capability of the mind. Here, you can write that this is quoted by Winston Churchill if you know it. If you didn't know it, fair enough, go with the direct way of introducing. Now, when we say empires, now, previously, the empires would always be militant in their character. Militant in the character means by the matter of brute physical force and by the means of brute physical force, they would end up conquering and capturing various areas, and they would expand their empire and they would expand their control. And that is what led to imperialism and colonialism, something which had continued for almost more than 2 millennia. But then, now going ahead into the future, that physical force is oftentimes seen to be incapable. Something that we have seen as a direct example in the case of Russia-Ukraine war. Now, when you think about the Russia-Ukraine war, think about it for a brief moment. When Russia invaded Ukraine, you ask anyone out on the streets, everyone would say that Russia is a major power. It would manage to overrun the entire region of Ukraine maybe within a week or at max 15 days. More than 2.5 years have passed since the onset of the war. And look at what the overall narrative has been. The narrative has been that Russia is doing a kind of an oppression, and also Ukraine is winning that war of narratives, how the world perceives Russia and how the world perceives Ukraine. That is something which is driving the outcome of the war. Various different countries, they are aiding Ukraine in its fight because of that narrative. And narrative is shaped by what? Narrative is shaped by the minds. And that is where the thought process gets involved. So this is a particular topic where you can provide both the supporting arguments the arguments which support this particular topic, right? So you have to provide the supporting arguments, and at the same time, the challenges posed by the power of the mind. That also needs to be highlighted. What are the various different challenges posed? So, how can we expand this article? What are the various perspectives that you can provide? Basically, when we talk about the importance of utilization of intellectual capability, that can basically mean we achieving our own human capital and human utilization, the utilization of the minds. But also, it would mean that a society, a nation, by utilizing its smartness, by utilizing its knowledge, can end up reaching greater heights. And this is where you can cite various different examples of civilizations reaching its pinnacle. From historical context, you can take the case of the Magadhan Empire, you can take the case across the world of the Byzantine Empire as well, who were particularly known for the advancement of the sciences. When the world entered the dark era or the dark age between 10th to 14th century, where you did not have any advancement of science, that was particularly attributed again to the lack of intellectual growth that was prevalent at that point of time. So, importance of utilization is of the capability is significant. Then, in the present day era, post Second World War, you will find that across the globe there is an overall dominance of United States. And Russia has largely been painted as a villain. Earlier it was Soviet Union, now Russia, and now even China. Now they have been painted as a villain in the larger global order. Now that brings into play the importance of soft diplomacy. This is the perspective of IR that you can provide, right? International relations. Now what US has done, there is a brute physical power which is also at play. But up till around 1990s, that is till the era of the Cold War, US did provide that physical power, but that physical power was also present with the Soviet Union. But there were various factors which led to the disintegration of the Soviet Union. But before that, in itself, the entire world was almost convinced that Soviet Union is not going to last, it is going to disintegrate, and it is not going to survive. That is because, again, the control of the narrative, the control of the thought process that was inculcated by US, right? And when it comes to our own country, we have been particularly known for having a very efficient soft diplomacy, be it the cultural outreach, be it through our movies, be it through the cricket. We always end up indicating, and the world ends up understanding and acknowledging that yes, India is a power to beckon with. And that is when we say that we are one of those aspirational superpowers, aspiring superpowers, that basically is us again improving our soft diplomatical skills there. Then technological advancements, which comes with the utilization of mind, that is much more powerful as of now as compared to the conventional weapons. If you consider a very normal or a typical theater of war out there. Now there also, there is a physical force which is used, but the country or the side which is able to use the technological advancements better, they will always end up being on the winning side. And that is where the technological warfare has come to the forefront. But this technological advancement can also be utilized for the development of the society in large, welfareism of the population at large. And a country which is strong from within, where the citizens are well empowered, the citizens are guaranteed with a particular set of living standards, that country is strong from within, and that country ends up exuberating power outside as well. So that is where technological advancements can be a solution to the various different types of problems that we face. But there are other perspectives as well. For example, development of a knowledge-based society, as I told you, will end up strengthening the society from within, bringing about newer ideas, newer thought process that will also lead to the advancement of the society, getting rid of the retrograde practices within the society. That cultural mindscape will end up developing. Now, as I say that we can have the technological advancement and the utility of the mind to conquer various other challenges. Empires need not only be territorial. When we say empires of the future, it can be the human civilization. Human civilization is confronted with various and a variety of different problems. The problems, let's suppose, of climate change. Now, when we talk about climate change, there can be one aspect, okay, a very conventional aspect of fighting or combating against climate change, you conserve the biodiversity. But the human advancement and the technological advancement has happened to such an extent that now we can think about the possibility of being able to cool down the globe as well, cool down the entire planet as well, by the processes of geoengineering. Let's suppose placing aerosols, being able to create clouds, being able to reflect the solar rays, we can induce some cooling as well. So that is where geoengineering can be considered to be one aspect of that developed mind, right? So geoengineering. This will add perspective to your topic that you are addressing. Then it can solve problems like the food and energy security. Due to climate change, the world is confronted with food scarcity, and also due to the fact that you have a kind of an increased population pressure by us humans, the area available for cultivation is going to experience a lot of pressure. That is going to shrink from all different sides. So in that scenario, when we have that technological development to create the bioengineered crops, when we have that advancement to create or carry out hydroponics, being able to grow crops in water, being able to grow crops in thin air, that is again what? Utilization of mindset to increase the civilization's role and the civilization's overall prowess. Energy security, again there, technological advancements make us more energy secure and ensure that we are able to fight any such variations thereby. So these are some of the perspectives that you can add, and all these perspectives, they aim for the same thing, that is the utilization of the mind. But then in the later part of the essay, you can also write that this particular thought process or the development of the mind is also confronted with certain challenges. What are the challenges? Now we see that the growth of AI in today's world has basically eased our understanding and has provided a significant amount of ease of business, ease of medicine, ease of, let's suppose, contracts, everything. AI has come to the forefront, ease of manufacturing, etc. But then there is a danger that this AI can end up impacting human possibilities as well. This AI can be utilized to alter social contracts and also can be utilized to create danger and damage in some nation or the other. So that danger associated with the rule of AI, be it job losses, be it economic loss, or be it even for committing frauds, there also you have that technological advancement which can be a danger posed. Another challenge that can be written is the context of the fourth generation warfare, where we have already talked about the fact that the controlling of narrative post the Second World War and during the era of the Cold War has been instrumental in shaping the public opinion with regards to which is a good side and which is a bad side. In the modern day warfare, you will observe that even today, for example, if you take the absolute relevant example, you will take the case of Russia, you will take the case of Israel. Now, they are investing quite heavily in the various countries of the world to influence public opinion with regards to what they are doing. Now, that influence of public opinion is known as the fourth generation warfare, where the wars are not won on the battlefield, but the wars are won even before the real battle begins. And that basically exposes us to a new range of possibilities and new range of dangers associated thereby as well. So post Second World War, controlling the narratives is one of the major aspect. Any kind of conflict that you see, the rush is to control the narrative, what the world thinks about you and how the world perceives you. this is also done in the era, in the present day, at a very localized level by the individuals who try to portray something else and are something else in reality. That is again a danger which can provide some amount of misinformation, misconception, and can have its own pitfalls. Now, the challenges: it can be exploited to create social and cultural divide. The development of technology can always be utilized to spread misinformation. Now, in the US election of 2016, there was a widespread allegation that by controlling the narrative, the Russian government and administration has managed to rig the polls in US. Now think about it. Present day possibilities, they always are talking about the fact that how technological advancement can be used to alter public behavior. Now, Richard Thaler was provided with the Nobel Prize in Economics for providing the concept of nudge theory or the nudge economics. What is that concept of nudge economics? That everything around you will end up pointing you in a certain direction and you end up making that choice inevitably. Now, that can be very dangerous at a larger level. In the role or in the world of information warfare and the information technology, public opinion can easily be alienated or can be directed towards each other. That could lead to significant divides in the society and can also eventually lead to social chasms and cultural divides being developed. And we are seeing that in front of our own eyes, that the world is getting polarized by the day. And most of it is on the basis of fake news narrative. That is again a kind of the war of the mind. So as the first part of the essay, you will concentrate upon the fact, or you have to concentrate upon the fact about the capabilities of the mind. In the second part, you talk about the dangers associated there also. But when you write the conclusion has to be written in a positive note regardless of the challenges. In the conclusion of the essay, you have to mention that the possibilities that are unfolded, that lie before us with reaching an intellectual capability and exploring the intellectual capability, that are significantly manifold, and we have to spend significant energy as a society, as a nation, as an individual, as a family to explore that kind of mindfulness or that mind exploration and reaching the zenith of intellectual exploration. Okay? Like that you can end the essay. Okay? Now, then the third question, the third topic which was asked. There is no path to happiness. Happiness is the path in itself. What is the exact meaning of it? That oftentimes you hear out in the society, or you hear about this, that if you follow this, you will be happy. If you follow these prescriptions and this prescribed measures, you will end up being happy. So those are your, many of the times, the prescriptions that people hand out, that you have various different such handouts which are provided, such kind of prescriptions which are provided. But then people are unable to reach that ultimate destination where they can say or they can claim that now I have become happy. From the very childhood day, a kid is basically told that if you do this, after that you will be happy. After you have reached that stage, no, you compete for this examination, then you will reach happiness. Then you do that, then you reach happiness. This is what leads to disillusionment in larger sections of the society as well, where you will see that, for example, take your case itself or the case of multiple candidates out there who are struggling day and night and who are going through everything possible in order to clear this exam of civil services. Now, why do you want to clear the civil services? You ask anyone. They say that they want to help the society. They say that they want to bring a smile on their parents' faces. They want to achieve that particular kind of satisfaction. But the end result or the end goal of each one of them is what? It is to attain a personal level of happiness. But then, if you think about it, let's suppose you enter the services. Now ask the people who are in services. Are they always happy? If that would have been the case, then there would not have been the situation where many people go through depressions. Even after clearing the exam, getting into the services, many people find themselves very lonely. Why is that? That is because it is not the destination which will provide them the happiness. There is no such fixed destination which is the key to the happiness. It is the pathway. It is the journey of exploration, the journey of moving from one place to another at your own level, at a level of a nation, at the level of the society that will provide you with the happiness. So this is something that comes under the category of the exact interpretation of the said topic. So Abraham Lincoln said a path, that is, you are as happy as you make up your mind to be, or happiness is a state of mind. When you feel content, when you feel satisfied, when you feel that sense of achievement, when you feel that you have come a long way, or whatever you are doing as of now that is helping someone, that is happiness. And that happiness needs to be realized without going through a rush to achieve something, right? So here, then you can follow that part of introduction with a torrent of questions, that what is happiness and why do we seek happiness? This is important. We seek happiness, why? In order to have peace and that sense of achievement in mind. So when we talk about what is happiness, it is not only a state of mind, it is an emotional state characterized by the feelings of joy, satisfaction, contentment, and fulfillment. That is happiness. Now, it is not only after achieving a particular set destination that you will feel that. This can be experienced much prior as well. So here, we have to understand that the basic ideal that it is a self-furthering goal or a self-distancing goal. That, okay, you get good marks up till class 5th, you will be happy. Then you get good marks up till class 10th, you will be happy. You score well in class 12th, you will be happy. You clear this particular competitive exam, JEE or NEET, you will be happy. You clear civil services, you will be happy. After that, you become chief secretary, you will be happy. After that, get another particular post-retirement job, you will be happy. You are searching for happiness and your life ends without, and this is a kind of a goal setting which keeps on getting distant. And before it becomes too late, a person realizes that the pathway was filled with opportune moments which could have provided happiness. But in the rush to reach to the destination, a person did not appreciate their surroundings and the opportunities that it brought by. So that is again an explanation or interpretation that you can provide. Now, you have to talk about the importance of the process of discovery. Discovery of what? Self-discovery. Vivekananda talked about the importance of self-discovery. And that is something that you can elaborate. That as an individual, let's suppose when you are carrying out any social work, you discover yourself. That, okay, I have some amount of greed within me. I have some amount of greed which seeks validation from others. So that is a process of your self-discovery. So that self-discovery, once it is attained, that is what is happiness. So that is very important. Now the world has tumbled down the path of materialism and we all move across the path of materialism tirelessly. We want to achieve something to be happy. Now that again self-furthering goal. But at the same time we have an alternate point of view about being minimalist. Having the least amount of possessions and the worldly possessions with you and still being able to find that joy. That is the minimalist approach. Here you can also talk about and further elaborate about the path of moderation which was provided 2500 years and more before by Gautam Buddha himself. So that path of moderation, Buddha said what? That it will lead you to nirvana. It will free you from that worldly plague of the thought of sadness, of grief, of anger. It will free you of those cycles. And once you become free from that, your mind is at peace, you attain the state of happiness. So that is again an example that could be easily provided here. Then, for example, how do you elaborate it or horizontally expand the topic to provide various perspectives? For example, in the present day context, corporate culture, the corporate greed and governance to attain something very quickly, that has overpowered our basic humanism. And it has led to various different toxic work cultures, exploitation of the employees, and employees at the end of the day, even after slogging for 14, 15 hours a day, they end up staying unhappy. If you take a look at, let's suppose, a common individual farmer, a farmer who is toiling for maybe 5 hours, 10 hours, or 12 hours, that farmer goes to sleep in a peaceful manner, mostly, as compared to most of the corporate employees that we have. So that could also be written. Now here, recently you had the example of a young executive of a consulting firm. It was her dream to work in that consulting firm. That was her goal of happiness. But once she reached there, she slogged for long hours. And there have been numerous such cases in various different organizations. And eventually, getting fed up from that, many individuals commit suicide. They don't want to live anymore. So where is that happiness, even after reaching the goal? Happiness was you attaining that job. Happiness was you discovering your own potential, that you can achieve something. Happiness was you looking at the society and then getting happy with that societal relationship. So that corporate greed or that aspect of achieving something also makes India one of the unhappy countries of the world. And here you can basically provide or cite the happiness index report, where India's rank is abysmally low. India ranks an abysmal 126 out of the 143 nations. Particularly resource-starved country of Bhutan, it ranks very high on happiness index. And their way of calculating the country's overall outcome is also changing into the happiness index. Now, it is not as if an individual in Bhutan is richer than an Adani or an Ambani out there. But then, happiness is what they seek out of the minimalistic approach, free and bereft of these worldly possessions. So that is an important thing that you can provide. Then you can also talk about the context of political ideology. Now, world is polarized. Our society is polarized in the sense that either you are with us or you are against us. There is a shrinking space of a thought process that I can think like this also, I can think to the right also, I can think to the left also, I can think to the center also. Either you are with us or you are against us. Now, the larger public, when they end up squibbling amongst each other and there's a growing hatred in the society, US is going to the polls. We just had the polls in the world's largest democracy in India and the oldest democracy as well. Now we saw how fragmented that society, our society did become. We saw the level of that anger in the arguments in the public debates. Why? Because the thought process in the mindset is that if this political ideology is attained, if this individual, let's suppose, comes to power, that is when I'll become happy. But do they actually become happy after that? No. That is just a means of a self-furthering goal, self-distancing goal. So, once you realize that that debate, that healthy discussion within the society, that variety of thought processes and ideas which flood around from everywhere, that is the key of happiness, or that is the key to the vibrant society. You appreciate the thought processes, all the very different thought processes. The polarization will reduce. Society will become a peaceful place to live in. And that is where governance will also improve. So this is again a perspective that can be added. But there are challenges as well. For example, there is the lure of quick money, that in order to be happy, I need this much amount of money. Due to which, what do you see? You see people indulging themselves in all the sort of wrongful activities, illegal activities, and sometimes gaining or attaining certain shortcut paths. Always remember that shortcut is oftentimes the longest distance between the two places. So as a consequence of that, while they take those shortcuts, they end up damaging the other perspectives or the other aspects of their life. And in the lure of money, the greed which comes in along with that, that also has a long-term impact on the mental health. So you don't reach or you don't attain that happiness, right? Then lack of attention to family and interpersonal relations, which is very prevalent nowadays. You don't appreciate, or we all as individuals, we don't tend to appreciate the family structure, the family support that we have. We don't tend to appreciate our, let's suppose, on a very simple scale, our neighbors, how society is rooting for us to succeed. Once we attain that success, then we aim for something else. But in the process, we have forgotten that the society, the family who was supporting us is now requiring that validation that, okay, because they also need to be happy. And at the end of it, that race continues till the grave and happiness is never realized. Then greater productivity of the society can be attained if the mind is at peace, if the mind is satisfied. Everybody will produce or will end up contributing to their maximum extent. Because a discontented mind, an unsatisfied mind will work, but will work inefficiently, will work with certain amount of grievances. So what should be the conclusion in this? Cherish and realize the opportunity that you have. Cherish and realize the opportunity of self-discovery, of intellectual growth. That is happiness. Every moment that you live is happiness. And that is what is the key to not only a peaceful individual, a peaceful society, eventually a peaceful global order as well. Okay? Now, then coming to the fourth question of section A. And this is a straightforward question. A doubter is a true man of science. Now, this is a quote which has been provided by Claude Bernard. Now, Claude Bernard basically had said, and this is a common known thought process, that the basic of a scientific temperament, the basic feature of a scientific temperament is the ability to question the status quo. What is the existing idea, the ability and the intellectual prowess to question that? That is scientific and true scientific temperament. So, a doubter, when we say a doubter, means what? That a rational thinker who can start to question. A doubter means the ability to ask questions. Ability to ask questions. Questions to whom and questions about what? Questions about the existing set of information. Questions about the existing norms. Questions about the ideals which are being propagated. That is the true man of science. Because here science is indicative of what? Here science is indicative of progress, enlightenment, renaissance. That is indicated by science. Growth is what science represents here. So only if you ask questions from the existing set of individuals and the existing power structure, the existing ideology, that is when you will attain that growth process. That is the overall meaning of this particular topic. So here, first of all, the interpretation needs to be detailed here. So importance of questioning the status quo. And when we say status quo, the existing belief systems, the existing systems of governance, economy, the existing system of social norms, of cultural traditions. For example, various different cultures have some of the very retrograde measures where, for example, in present day era, patriarchy is one of the biggest plague that the world is impacted with. So that is where, when you question that system, that is when you tend to grow. That is when the society tends to grow here. For example, you had Raja Ram Mohan Roy. Raja Ram Mohan Roy questioned the aspect of Sati Pratha. That why is it needed? He was a doubter. Now what did it lead to? The society abhorring that Sati Pratha. Now, similarly, you had Ishwar Chandra Vidyasagar, who virtually challenged everybody that, okay, if you believe in the text and the ancient text and the scriptures, find me one particular argument that why and how widows should not be remarried. Now, that stigma associated with widows, the stigma similarly associated with child marriage, the entire set of reformists that we had in the 1800s and the 19th century, they questioned the status quo. And what did it lead to? Our entire society being able to move forward from those ills of the past. So that is where science here is indicative of progress and growth. Now, existing systems, traditions, societal norms, all of that will come here, and even the ideology. Ideology can be thought process, it can be political, it can be religious. Question that. And that is what the various different great proponents, even in the religious spheres, they have always advocated that doubters, and they have promoted those doubters. Then, when we take the further examples in the modern era, now, for a long period of time, you had the propagation of the thought process that Earth is the center of the universe. And for even before that, you had the thought process that the planet is flat, the planet is not spherical. You had flat earthers. It was only after Magellan's doubt that the planet cannot be flat, and the fact that Magellan actually managed to circumnavigate the planet, you had the progress of science. Similarly, when you talk about the geocentric or heliocentric model, now initially the thought process was that we are the center of the universe. It was that doubt which many people had, from Copernicus to Galileo, everyone, that no, we might not be the center. And that is what led to the growth of astronomy, astronomical science, to the present day scenario, where we know we are just a tiny component of that entire scheme, which is the universe. We are not the whole and sole center of the universe. Then, when you talk about the European Renaissance is well known for the advancement of European society and science in European society. Now, that Renaissance had its roots in the various different thinkers in Europe. From Voltaire to Rousseau, you had thinkers who talked about the fact that everything is not teleological, everything is not God-given. You basically have human rights and human capabilities that need to be respected. And that paved the way for humans to question the order provided by the Catholic Church at that point of time. And that led to the advancement of science. And look how Europe actually benefited, the society, the region benefited because of that doubts that those particular thinkers sowed in the minds of the people. So that is where, again, you can exemplify this. Then furthermore, the importance of scientific outlook also needs to be elaborated in this essay, that why an individual needs to have a scientific outlook, why the society needs to have the scientific outlook, why a nation needs to have a scientific outlook. And here we can take the case of our own country. Now, our country, post-independence, and even pre-independence, we have been rooted in our scientific approach, that we need to develop. Let's suppose we are talking about the Indian Space Station, we are talking about space exploration, we are talking about advancement in medicine, vaccines, etc. And look at our immediate neighborhood, barring China. Now, in our immediate neighborhood, you will find that the countries who got freedom at the same time as us, and they are rooted in that kind of an ideological stagnation, they are going through a phase of decay, whereas we are on the ascent. So that is where India's story can also be depicted. Then, when we talk about the untapped human capabilities, unless and until you ask questions, unless and until you doubt something, your mind will not be forced to think. Your mind will be very happy where it is. And that is when you start exploring the possibilities of what you can achieve. If someone tells you, for example, let's suppose that this individual is not good and this individual has got a limited brain capacity, unless and until that individual or the system around that individual starts to think about other possibilities, that no, maybe academically that person cannot have that much achievement, but maybe in the area of performing arts, that person can achieve something. For example, if you consider the case of Einstein, if you consider the case of even Newton, they were not the brightest of the students out there, but today the world knows them as the luminaries of science. Why? Because they doubted the aspersions which the society forced on them, the society cast on them. So that is where untapped human capabilities, unless and until you doubt the aspersions, you won't be able to grow. Then examples of growth models. Now this is again a recent phenomena. For a long period of time, GDP growth was considered to be the only parameter of growth that was there. Various different countries competed for greater GDP growth rate. If your GDP is growing well enough, you are in good league. But then people doubted it, that just a growth figure or a growth number cannot actually mean human emancipation from the ills of the society and the better life that the humans deserve. That is when you had the evolution of HDI parameters. And that evolution of HDI parameters, look how it has changed the paradigm of how we take a look at human capabilities. We talk about the life expectancy. We talk about the educational outcomes. We talk about the inequality in the society. What is this? This is basically us doubting and expressing doubt to the existing norms, and that is what has led us to growth much more and opened windows for further exploration. Similarly, accountability of actions can be sought for better governance structures. Political leaders will tell us something and everything to convince us, right? Same is the case with preachers out there. But then when we doubt that, that leads to better growth, better outcomes. So in small paragraphs, you can add these perspectives to provide a variation and also exemplify them with multiple different thought processes. Again, I want you to write that in the comment section. Now, before we proceed further into the section B, an important announcement for all the serious aspirants out there. Now, we have been known to produce multiple rankers from our course. Now, looking at that, last year as well, we managed to produce 70 plus rankers in the UPSC merit list. So looking at that success, we are proud to announce the Unacademy Assured program, and that is your dream, our mission for cracking the civil services. Because we are absolutely convinced that our coverage of the syllabus by the top educators that the country has to offer provides you with the perfect guideway and the perfect pathway to achieve success. We provide a plethora of different services, from test series to the aspect of, let's suppose, paper evaluation to the lectures dependent on the syllabus. So that is where we can assure that you will clear the examination. So here, this Assure program that we have initiated. So first of all, when you subscribe and when you enroll, so here, if you clear the prelims, and when you, it is not about if, it is about when. When you manage to clear the prelims examination, then basically the QEP program for the mains, a quality enrichment program for the mains, will be provided to you free of cost. And again, not if, but when you clear the mains examination, we will be happy to provide the free interview guidance program, guide you for the interview process, making you able enough to tackle any kind of questions thrown at you. Eventually, we all hope that your dream will be realized when you clear the exam by the interview, and after the interview, we ensure 100% fee refund. But let's suppose you are unable to clear that examination, at any particular stage, then we will provide that free extension for 1 year so that you have another shot at the same exam with better information set. But this is just so that you don't take it for granted. We have based this on a certain set of parameters based upon the feedback that we have from how the toppers would attend the sessions, where we observed that majority of the toppers would attend at least 500 plus number of hours of plus courses, etc. So those particular certain basic minimum criteria you fulfill, you are eligible for that Assure program. But rather than looking at the refund, take a look at it as an opportunity to succeed, opportunity to realize your dream. So enroll for this and get a step closer to achieving your dream. Having said that, now we move on to Section B. Section B again was something which was laced with philosophical articles. So here the article or the topic which was one of the easier ones and very contemporary in today's day and age was the fact that social media is triggering the FOMO factor, that is fear of missing out amongst the youth, precipitating depression and loneliness. Now this was a bit on the expected lines. Why do I say so? Because in this year's economic survey, there had been a separate chapter which had been dedicated to the loss of demographic dividend, human capital, because of the impact of social media. Majority of the youth, not only in our country but across the world, they are hooked on to the social media at an unprecedented rate, at an unparalleled rate. As a consequence of that, there are various ill effects which are in front of all of us. Now, the damages, the dangers, they can be at a very personal level as well. For example, we are seeing that just in order to gain that short and quick fame, many people are basically putting their lives in danger, putting the lives of the other people in danger, and that has got serious impacts. We as a country, we as a society need to seriously think about it. We need to recalibrate how we approach the social media. Whether as an individual we are awakened, as a society we become more careful, or do we eventually feel the need to bring about some aspect of regulation? That is what this topic would explore, and your essay should explore. So here in the interpretation part, what do you explain? Lure of social media is quite significant. Be it the various different platforms of social media, now one-sided perspective of things are provided. Oftentimes, you will come across a scenario where individuals who are great influencers on social media, they basically talk about, let's suppose, their workplace or a particular region to visit. Now, they will only show the good sides associated with it. That creates a false sense of impression in that impressionable child, in that impressionable youth, who actually has to work a lot, attain a lot in their life. That also creates a false sense of achievement, a false sense of purpose in many of the cases. So that is where that one-sided perspective of things can be dangerous. It can create false impressions. It can push people to take shortcuts, and that shortcut is never advisable. Now, once you take the shortcut and let's suppose you are unable to attain the said desired goal, that is when you have dangers of loneliness, dangers of disappointment. And because you have risked it all to reach that, because you did not pay attention to anything else, that is where the risk involved is at a personal level. It can impact your thinking, it can put you into depression. And we don't realize what our human mind is capable of. Just achieving success, for example, take the case of earning money. Now, in social media, that is where you have the economic survey also talking about the dangers of F&O trading, that is futures and options trading. Increased number of youth are getting involved in that futures and options trading. Why? For the lure of earning good money or high amount of money in a very quick span of time. They don't want to go through the hard yards of doing the job, working, and then earning money. if they feel, because on social media, many people, influencers have managed to convince the larger population that just by spending 15 hours in F&O trading, you can end up making millions. What is happening as a result of that? More than 99% of the individuals are facing personal financial losses. They are pushed into a kind of a financial difficulty, and at the end of it, they are unable to attain or any kind of solace or salvation out of it. So that is one of the disadvantages associated. But in the way or in the process of achieving that fame, achieving that glory, they can put others at risk as well. Similarly, you have tangible dangers. In order to gain that fame, many people are happy to put their lives at risk. That is where you will see that fame seekers, they go and stand near a cliff in order to get famous on social media, or basically sometimes nowadays in India we are witnessing this in front of our own eyes, where people have started placing obstacles on the railway tracks. Now again, think about it. What can be the outcome of it? How many lives can be put at stake? That is where the danger is very real, but not only restricted or limited to that individual, but society as a whole. Then furthermore, missing out on specialization or the hard yards. Why is that created? The FOMO factor is also something that you have to concentrate upon. What is that fear of missing out? If you see someone attaining that fame very quickly, earning money very quickly, you get that realization that I'm not doing that. That creates a sense of dissatisfaction in the mind. And that sense of dissatisfaction, we talked about the context of happiness, that can be included here. And that unstable mind will never do any good. Productivity will go out of the window. When you don't put in the hard yards, you lose faith in yourself. And when you lose faith in yourself, you are bound to take some kind of disadvantageous measures. Then, dangers of a lonely mind, we know. Suicide rates have been increasing left, right, and center. And more worrying is the fact that the suicide rates are much more prevalent in the young ones, in the impressionable minds. You had various different, and you basically had in the recent past some of the games which were very famous on social media, which claimed many lives. So that lonely mind, that dejected mind finds no hope. Why? Because they are lured by that, and they feel that if they don't take that opportunity, they have lost out on a massive thing. That is dangerous. Then impact on mental health, shortened attention span. Because of that social media, the overall attention span. Not many people nowadays have the habit of reading books, for example, of going through various different detailed researches, for example. Now that is reducing your own human capability, your ability to actually work hard, because you are so used to taking shortcuts. Because you see people taking shortcuts, and the perception is that that person has succeeded by taking that shortcut. So that is where the shortened attention span, the fear of failure is much more heightened. So that is the aspect of social media. What you also have to highlight here is the risk to the human capital. And when we say human capital, basically means our ability to reach intellectual prowess, our ability to get ourselves educated, and a society's overall demographic dividend that we have been talking about. Large section of the youth are being misguided, they are being misled, and the demographic dividend, which is supposed to benefit the family, benefit the society, and benefit the nation at large, is turning out into demographic disaster. So the journey from demographic dividend to disaster. That is the role that the social media is playing. All in the search of quick fame. all in the search of happiness, which is never going to be attained because it is a self-furthering goal. Okay? I'm sure you would have some other pointers in your mind as well. Do write it in the comment section about how social media is having an impact on the mindset of the youth. Okay? Then the next question. Nearly all men can stand adversity, but to test the character, give him power. Now, this is a quotation which is attributed to Abraham Lincoln, where Abraham Lincoln had said the second part of this part or this entire thought, that is, to test a man's character, give him power. But if you attach the first part as well, that nearly all men can stand adversity, that means what? That when adverse conditions come, then mostly people are able to withstand that. People are able to tolerate that adversity. But when you provide the people with power, the ability to control something, ability to decide not only for yourself but for others as well, that is what power means. Power at any level means what? You have now gained the ability to control something else. That is when your benevolence, your attributes, your positive character comes to the fore. So that is where this topic is derived from. Now, this topic also, if you have to talk about the interpretation first. So, when adverse conditions come, let's suppose you have economic hardship, or let's suppose as of now you are preparing and let's suppose you manage not to succeed in the examination. That is an adverse condition. Your mind is working against you, your family might not be favorable towards your working towards the civil services examination, or the society might not be in favor of you preparing for the exam. That is an adversity. So, in adversity, many of the times people don't have many choices that they can take. That no, I choose to do this or I choose to do that. No, you are forced into a decision. So, adversity is forceful in deciding what you do. But when you have power, that gives you freedom, that gives you independence, and that gives you the ability to control something else. That is when your real character comes to the fore. So, that is the actual interpretation, that adversity offers very little options out there. Basically, adversity types can be mental, can be personal. In all of them, you have very little real options out there. You have to face that adversity, right? It will be your mental strength, your interpersonal strength, which will decide whether you are able to face that adversity or not. But the aspect whether you are kind enough, whether you are greedy, that is something which only power will show. Because with power comes the control and the ability to influence the decisions. Now, here various perspectives that can be provided. For example, authoritarianism and the rise of authoritarianism. For example, take the case of the Bolshevik Revolution in Russia. Now, there as well, when you talk about the communists who came to power, now they overthrew the Tsar regime. And when they overthrew the existing regime, the thought process was what? The thought process was that we will bring power to the people. But once they gained power, they became authoritarian. Take the case of Saddam Hussein. Saddam Hussein, when he came at the helm of power in Iraq, he was celebrated as a liberator. But at the peak of his authoritarian and dictatorship regime, he basically was the oppressor in chief. Muammar al-Gaddafi in Libya, right? Like that, you have then when you had the Amin regime in the region of Somalia. So, like that, you had various different dictators across the world who came to the power with the lofty ideals of providing freedom to the society. But eventually, the society was burdened with their dictatorship. That is what showed their true character. Okay? Then, when we talk about global governance. Now, in the case of global governance, India has been facing a lot of adversity since the past couple of centuries. And we have faced economic hardships. We have faced hardships on the face of, let's suppose, famines. We have faced hardships in the availability of food. We have faced hardships in the spread of diseases. So hardships have been quite common and significant. But now that we are reaching a kind of an influential position, an affluent role, the direction and the decisions that we take now, which has the power to influence others, that decides whether we are capable to sit at the high table or not. For example, now that India is a leading voice in the Global Committee of Nations, look at India's actions. We are seeking to broker peace between the warring nations of Ukraine and Russia. We are seeking to bring about the climate justice for all. We are seeking to bring about, by our LIFE initiative, we are seeking to change the consumption and the production pattern the world has witnessed. We are seeking to bring the voice to the often ignored African Union and the Global South. So India's role, when India has got the power, is what shows our character as a civilization. Then, vaccine diplomacy during the time of the COVID pandemic is another very suitable example. So, oftentimes we have been at the receiving end of the diseases, and various different advanced countries, they have managed to deny us with the availability of vaccines and so on. But when at the time of the COVID pandemic, we managed to develop our own vaccines, what did we do? Did we manage to hoard all those vaccines with us like countries like US did? No. We provided those vaccines free of cost to the countries of the Global South. And many of those countries are still thankful to India for the leadership role and the leadership that it showed by providing that vaccine diplomacy. So again, that is another kind of proof. Then the power of narrative. Here again, the role of the preachers, the religious preachers, the lifestyle gurus that you have, the so-called lifestyle gurus who are gaining a lot of fame. Now, when they gain power, how do they behave? What do they tell the individuals? Whether they inculcate peace or whether they inculcate societal chasm and societal divide, that shows their true character. Not the clothes that they wear, not the outfit that they support. It is what they say and what they practice. So, like that, multiple such examples and perspectives can be given. But this is a topic which also provides you an opportunity to challenge the topic. Because here the topic is saying that nearly all men can stand adversity, but the character is tested by power. You can stand to argue that even adversity can bring a test of the character. And that can be a counter thought that you can write in the second part of the essay. It will diversify how you are expressing the thought. So, adversity offers options to re-evaluate. For example, test the resilience of personality, individual person, that whether you are resilient enough or not, whether you manage to remain positive there or not, whether you are then encircled in that cycle of greed or not, whether you are progressive enough or not. When a society is faced with adverse conditions, when a nation is faced with adverse conditions, the pathway that it takes, that ends up reflecting the character of that society. We have faced that multiple times. We have faced economic crisis in India. Now, at the time of economic crisis, our ability to reform ourselves, our ability to completely change the set norms of economic paradigms before that showed our true character as a nation. Then, for example, India at the time of the British Raj, at the time of the British era, now we were colonized for almost 200 years. Now, the framers of the Indian Constitution, think about it, they had never lived in a free country. They had never breathed free air in India. When the time came to write the constitution for future of the country, they talked about universal franchise. Everybody has got the right to vote. Now, what does that indicate? Right to vote for women. which many of the so-called modern democracies took centuries to arrive at. We provided that from the first day. What does that tell you? That tells you that this basically depicted the true free character, egalitarian and democratic character of the Indian civilization. That even though the country was colonized, our minds were not colonized. Our minds represented equality. Our minds represented freedom. So like that, you can also offer a kind of a counter thought. But then eventually you can talk about that people, when they are in the process of gaining power, then they behave differently. When they attain power, they behave differently. Give examples. But I would also suggest that in this topic, many of you will have the temptation to provide current political examples within India. Refrain from doing that, because you might end up trying to indicate something else, but you might end up indicating a kind of a political biasness. Don't do that. Try to refrain from that. That is what will ensure that you are able to score good marks. Okay? Then, all ideas having large consequences are always simple. Now here, Leo Tolstoy famously had said that thoughts that have important consequences are always simple. This appears to be a kind of a natural derivative from that thought process propagated by Leo Tolstoy. So here, what is the interpretation and the perspective that you can provide? So various different moves and various different events which have an epoch-bearing kind of consequence, they germinate from a simple basic idea. For example, the idea of freedom and democracy. Every individual should have the right to vote. Every individual should have the representation. Now, that is a very simple idea. What did it do? It basically energized the large civilization that India had been to fight for its freedom, to eventually be able to gain independence. That entire freedom movement was germinated by that simple thought process. Then, when you talk about, let's suppose, the Chinese civilization and the Chinese system of governance and the entire population as of now. Now, you might agree or you might disagree with the fact, but their rise and that spectacular rise is fueled by what? A simple belief that we are destined for greatness. We are an ancient civilization. We are meant for greatness. It is a simple thought. The consequence on a global stage is quite magnified, isn't it? Then you can also talk about the butterfly effect here. What is butterfly effect? That each and every smallest of the action can have major global consequences. So, when you talk about revolution in any part of the world, it has its consequences in other areas. When the French Revolution happened and when you had the American War of Independence, that happened in very close quarters, very close to each other. It was fueled by the man's very basic idea of freedom, of independence, and the ability to express. Now, that led to changed system of governances in many parts of the world. Take the case of Arab Springs. Again, based and rooted on the same set of basic ideals, it basically led to significant amount of upheaval in the entire region of Middle East and North Africa. So that is where these simple thought processes oftentimes even lead to greater scientific achievements. And here, when we talk about scientific progress, when we say major discoveries, oftentimes rooted in simple idea of an atom. Can we split that? Can we basically bombard each other or the atom with each other? That simple idea led to the creation of energy security measures as well in the form of nuclear power, but also unleashed a great danger in the form of the nuclear bomb. So that is where major consequence initiated by what? Initiated by the basic thought process. Then reforms and welfareism. The governance, particularly in our country, our method of governance, it is reform or it is welfareism oriented. Now that welfareism or the welfarist method of governance is rooted in what? That each and every individual will have or does have their own rights. They need to have a perfect or a kind of a basic minimal conditionality of life to be fulfilled. Okay, so like that you can exemplify this answer. Okay, I hope that this is also understood, at least the meaning and the perspective of it is gathered. Now, what are the challenges? Challenges are when we have these simple ideas, oftentimes, if they are not channelized in the correct direction, it can lead to radicalism, it can lead to victimhood identity, victim mindset, and that can lead to the growth of fundamentalism, which oftentimes is the root cause of terrorism in many parts of the world. And that simple idea which can germinate this is the aspect that we are basically victims, or that matter of seeking justice, let's suppose, turns into seeking revenge. That is when radicalization and fundamentalism can be on the offing. So like that, you can describe the challenges in the later part of the essay as well. Now moving to the last question. I hope by now you have gained an overall perspective of how to attempt the questions and what each of these questions actually require you to write as a candidate. Now, the cost of being wrong is less than the cost of doing nothing. Now, this is a derivation from a previously asked question that a ship is safe at the harbor, but that is not what ships are for. That was a previously asked question, and this is of the same line. Now, this is a quote by Seth Godin. Now, basically, what does it tell you? It tells you that when you are wrong, when you risk being wrong, yes, there are dangers. For example, when you are wrong, it can be temporary. There can be pecuniary or financial loss. There can be, let's suppose, personal loss. There can be losses at levels. But then what do you gain out of it? You basically have learnings. You become smarter and wiser. And the others also learn from that. The smart are the ones who learn from their own mistakes. The wiser are the ones who learn from others' mistakes. So you can go wrong, but there is an upside associated as well. Then it will also provide you with the resilience and the strength of character to face adversities in your life when you have been wrong. And if you are truthful enough and if you reflect on it, in future, you basically are much wiser. Then the cost of doing nothing is what? Missed opportunities. There are various different aspects that you are unable to explore. What might have happened if I would have attempted for this examination? I might not have succeeded, but at least I did attempt. If I would have succeeded, life would have been different. That is where missed opportunities are something which can plague you for life. Like that, in our country as well, in our country's developmental journey, we have basically had many of these missed opportunities, be it on the forefront of industrialization during the 70s, or be it at the aspect of adopting certain reform measures. We were delayed because of that, because of the fear that we might get wrong. Now there, you can also give the example of the situation of policy paralysis, a term which was significantly associated with our governance standards during the 2010s to 2012, at that time window, where owing to the fear that you might have a litigation, you might have a later on investigation carried out against you, many of the government officials did not sign on the many files. What did it lead to? As a result of that, many infrastructure projects could not get executed. The banks who had lent for these infrastructure projects basically also meant that they faced the twin balance crisis, the twin deficit crisis. You had the NPA crisis, which was also partly dependent on that. So rather than that, if you take a wrong decision, it is okay to be wrong. To err is human. To learn from it is divine. So that is where we can have multiple learnings associated. So like that, you can write the details of this article or this question as well. So I hope that this session has proved helpful, not only for the candidates who are appearing for the examination, but also the candidates who are going to appear for the examination in the coming days. For various different articles, particularly the aspect of social media creating that FOMO, do provide your perspectives which is different from the one discussed in the session. And do try to explore your mental capabilities and expand it by thinking about newer paradigms in which you could write or provide the pointers. Put that in the comment section, and if you have liked the video, please don't forget to click on the like, share and the subscribe button. Tomorrow we meet again to discuss the questions of GS paper 1 and GS paper 2 and subsequently 3 and 4. So till then, do take care of yourself, relax, goodbye, thank you.